Yes, I like to start off, I've been starting off a lot of lectures lately by saying I'm a lucky archaeologist. And there's many reasons, but one of the reasons is that I get to teach this field school out on Tommy Bolak's 13,000 acres on the south side of the San Juan River, right across from the city of Farmington. And Point Pueblo is in a very dramatic location. It does have a great kiva. That's where we've been doing most of the work, and so that's what I'm going to talk about today. We did do a plan view, a very good plan view of the entire site last year. Had some volunteers that we did this after the session was over. And for the very first time, I realized that the great house is actually rectangular. I had always previously thought that it kind of covered the semicircular outline of the bench, but it doesn't. It's rectangular, which really makes it look Chacoan then, except for the architecture, which is a very local architecture, cobbles, shale, adobe. There's little pieces of Chacoan architecture in the walls, so it looks like it was heavily remodeled afterwards, with just a few segments that are probably two-story. And the Great Kiva is attached to the southwest edge of the Great House. So I looked at others that might have been attached to that southwest edge, and Village of the Great Kivas came up, as well as one of the great houses up on Morris 41, which is also attached to the southwest on the middle Chacoan one. There's one that's like a D-shaped one that's later, and then I think there's actually three there. There's a local one, and then this Chacoan one. So it's similar to the Chacoan there in that it has that Great Kiva attached to the southwest edge, although at Morris 41 they put a wall all the way around it. So far we haven't seen that here at Point. So thank you, Tommy Bolak, and thank you, San Juan College, for allowing me to continue to work there. This was year 18. Had 10 students this year, 12 volunteers. I always put out that if you sign up once and pay for the course once, you're welcome to come back as many times as you want for as long as you want. So I do have quite a few people that return. This year I've had 2 people that were there the entire time, 2 or 3 others that were there the majority of the time, and the rest of them were kind of in and out with a few days here or a few days there. Let's see. To summarize very, very briefly, last year, 2012 through 2015, we excavated the entire uppermost floor of the Great Kiva, which definitely is a late floor. I don't have any dates yet. I have some Archeo magazine, but I haven't heard any results back yet. And that's very late. Definitely, it's going to be probably your 1270 plus as the end of the occupation. And so we did find lots of Mesa Verde black and white, and as well as Maquilmo, White Mountain redware. Interestingly enough, there's a strong southern connection here at the site. We do get a lot of Mogollon smudgewares, and also the Red Mesa black on white. Red Mesa black on white is all over that site, and it's not Cortez black on white, it is Red Mesa black on white coming from the south. Has a very distinctive bright white slip with beautiful designs on it, and I have found this year I've always realized that there's a lot of it on the site, but I do believe that in the Great Kiva what we found this year was that a lot of things were purposefully placed throughout the floors, not just on that upper floor, but all the floors going all the way down to the remodeled floor do have things that were purposefully placed there that I usually refer to as goodies. Beads, projectile points, and the beads and pendants, and this year we even found a forked piece of wood on the floor that had been modified. The one end of it was definitely ground off to be squared off. It wasn't very big, 6 inches big, approximately. And so I just wanted to mention that before I run out of time, because it seems like I always start and then they say, "You're done," and I'm going, ah! Okay. Okay, so we excavated the east half because last year we put a trench right through the middle, went down through all the floors to the original floor, found that had been cleaned out completely. There were no artifacts on that floor. There wasn't even any charcoal on the floor. It was like they really cleaned it, and then I don't know if they actually put another layer of clay down there to make it so clean, but anyway, it's very clean. And then they brought in about 15 to 18 centimeters of a coarse gravelly sand that does have artifacts in it. They're not lying flat, they're just kind of scattered through there. And then and in that sand there's not a whole lot of ash, but there's definitely small little chunks of charcoal, as well as a lot of chunks of a very shaly coal is what I believe it is. So that is scattered throughout the entire kiva in that layer. Then on top of that layer, they put down another 8 to 10 centimeters of a very yellowish, I'm calling it a sandy clay, which is pretty darn hard. And then in our stratigraphy, it shows up really well, those three strats actually. So there's the coarse gravelly sand, the band of yellow clay, and then multiple floor lenses on top of that, at least 15 to 20 centimeters of multiple floor lenses. So floor 1 was the very top. There are different floor levels, probably about every 2 to 3 centimeters. You can only pick up that differentiation at the edges by the bench. There you can clearly see that, there's another layer, and you can even see the little adobe that they've laid up at the juncture of the bench and the floor. So that's very interesting, but as you go in, away from the bench, they blend. So what we did was we just point located everything that was lying flat and called it all, I'm calling it all floor 1, but there's just multiple lenses in floor 1 till you get down to the first remodeled floor, which is floor 2, right on top of that band of sandy clay. As we figured out from the trench last year, there were features that showed up in that trench, a number of them, and so I should have suspected that that was what was going to happen when we cleared down to floor 2. And in point of fact, we found nearly 100 features on the floor. 50 of them, a little bit more than 50, are entirely clustered over in that northeast quadrant of the Great Kiva. I mean, there's so many there, you just have to, you have to step around. You can hardly walk through there. And these all seem to be associated with floor 2. Then they capped them. They completely, they used them for different uses. You can see they're not truly, I'm calling them post holes because they're the size of a post hole, but I don't think that they were actually used as post holes. Only one had desiccated wood in it. But there were several that had a cobble capping them at the top, broken. Some of them did have slabs at the bottom, but not very many. One of them had a slab at the side. As to what they contained, mostly it was just sand, very sandy soil, and some of it really did look just like that coarse gravelly sand, but when you excavated, you could definitely feel a harder area at the edge there. And some of them turned out to be bell-shaped post holes, which I'd never heard of before, but I'm going to call them that, bell-shaped post holes, which, they're kind of your post hole size. They come down, and some of them gradually come out kind of looking like a gourd shape. Some of them come down and then bulge out right at the bottom, and some of them have protuberances that go out at the side that you can go back in there and you feel that it ends. It's not a rodent hole. At first we were going, well, that's rodent, but no, it's not. It does have a hard side to it. There were a number of them do have sherds, just a couple of sherds in them, and definitely beads. Beads are associated with these things too. Particularly in the east, there were at least 16 beads that were clustered around several of the post holes over there. The two post holes and again, I'm saying post holes, but I don't know that they're actually post holes. The two at the very southern end each had a single bead on top of them, and these things don't show up until you're right down on top of floor 2. So again, I'm emphasizing that they were covered up. Floor 1 has very, very few features. The only features we really got were these floor burns, thermal stains, which we did run across maybe one or two of those, but very few. The larger ones that I'm calling pits are about 30 to 40 centimeters, well, let's say 20 to 40 centimeters in diameter. Most of those are clay lined, and then they were filled at the end evidently with just deposits that are kind of clayey, adobe, have rocks in them. They don't look very significant at all. One of the pits did have a very nice polychrome sherd in the bottom of it that I do think was left there on purpose. Let's see what else I got here. Total artifacts, before I forget, 3,290. Red Mesa, I mentioned Red Mesa as goodies. I think that they were putting the Red Mesa shirts, because they're so beautiful, also placing those on the floor in different places also. So we do have some directional things going on. There's projectile points in the north. There's only one from the south, and that was a broken one. The three that we got from the north were very beautiful side notch projectile points. 4 pendants, and there's a directional thing going on here too. There's a jet pendant in the north on the west side of the feature, very northwest side of the feature. There's a abalone shell pendant on the east. That thing was pretty fractured, but we did have the single hole that showed that it was a pendant. Then there was a turquoise pendant at the south, and then the argillite pendant was what you would say is sort of the center of the east half. It was right adjacent to the vault wall on the interior, very close to the center of the vault. So that also, there seems like not only is there a directional, but there's a color thing going on there too. The fish, okay. It wasn't a whole fish. I'm sorry if I misled you, Michelle. There's not a whole fish there. It's not the whole skeleton, but we did find vertebra and the ribs of a fish, and that was on the east side also. Fortunately, those fish do have a very distinctive vertebra. The beads, okay, that was all on that. Post holes and pits. Most were capped with the hard sand and then covered over. Okay, and finally is the biggest pit at the very south end, which I'm afraid I didn't realize what was going on down there, so I didn't look at that as closely as I should have, because we kind of thought this, the whole site has been looted heavily through the years, and we do find evidence over there in the southeast quadrant. We did find an eyeglass lens way down above floor 1. So every once in a while, and then over on the east also, they broke through the wall of the kiva and destroyed the floor over there. So we were thinking that it was a looter's pit at first, but it's not. It's definitely a, what you call it, Steve, a communal, yeah, there we go. Except that I think they were using it the whole time. I don't think it's just at the closing. They were using it constantly. It had 600 sherds in it, a bunch of cores, cobbles, burned stuff. It kind of looked like a mess. But Elaine has been putting together some vessels, and we at least see 8 of them there. Okay, I think, is that it? Okay, good.